As the congregation filled into the church on Pentecost Sunday, the ushers handed each of the people coming in a carnation or two to symbolize the festive spirit of the day. The people listened attentively to the Pentecost story about how the disciples had heard what sounded like the power of a wind from heaven, and how the Holy Spirit had appeared like tongues of fire. Then came the sermon, and the preacher began, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. Like a powerful wind from heaven," shouted a woman sitting in the front pew, and she threw one of her red carnations towards the altar. The preacher began again, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon us," and the same woman's voice rang out again, "Like the tongues of fire," and she threw a red carnation towards the altar. The preacher looked her straight in the eye and said to her, "Now throw down your pocketbook." To which the woman replied, "Preacher, you have just calmed the wind and put out the fire." It's very easy to be half-hearted in following the message of the gospel and to put out the fire of the Spirit. It's also quite scary when one is personally challenged to look at one's lifestyle and make a move away from one's comfort zones. And for me to hear the message of this morning's gospel, as Jesus says to us, "As the Father has sent me, so I am sending you," scares me. And this is where I find myself on this Pentecost Sunday, being invited by the Spirit to change my life and return to Africa. To hear again the call to go where I don't know, to a new mission, and never be the same again. In a few weeks, I will depart with faith in the call of Pentecost. I am an itinerant missionary on the move, and the seed of the gospel was never meant to be hoarded. It is ours for the sowing, freely, liberally, with boundless generosity and wild abandon, beyond borders and continents, to places unknown, that we may return far richer and never be the same. On this Pentecost, I'm invited to look at my own life and to reflect on how I am going to respond to the promptings of the Spirit. Africa, for me, is a beautiful place with beautiful people, and the majesty and wonder of God is manifest in both, and never ceases to delight, amaze, and fill me with awe, gratitude, and appreciation. And the poet Gerald Manley Hopkins had it right when he said, "The world is charged with the grandeur of God, and just maybe Africa a little bit more." But hearing Jesus saying to me this morning, "I am sending you, Martin," still scares me. I have an aging mother, and I wonder, am I making the right decision in leaving her behind and following the Spirit? As a missionary, I see my role to be a soothing balm to those I minister to with the AIDS virus. I see myself as a positive challenge to the young people I meet across the African continent. I see myself as a person who stops in the street and encounters people and their stories. And yet, I have no romantic notion about this call. I am a stranger in a mysterious land, with an invisible barrier of nuances I will never quite understand. A barrier of culture, of language, of nationality, a barrier of time and ways of thinking about life. Some years ago, I heard the story from another missionary who said to me, "One day after preaching about Jesus, a man approached me and asked me, 'Tell me 3 things,' he said, 'about your Jesus. Did he ever kill a lion? How many herd of cattle did he have? And how many wives did he have?' And I suppose this is a great illustration of the misunderstanding of cultures and how people misunderstand what we try to preach. There is a line in a Spanish song which says, "If you want to be invisible, there is no surer way than to become poor." Jesus sending me is a call to keep the stories of the poor in the forefront of society. The invisible God is made visible through the actions that each one of us do in life. And while the culture and privilege and the culture of poverty and hardship exist side by side, this is where the Spirit sends us to minister. And the Spirit invites the missionary to take centre to the margins. I've always felt a unique call to hang out with the fringe dwellers. It engenders a much greater, deeper, and more personal experience of what it feels like to be marginalised. And in many ways, I am marginalised myself. But an open heart accompanies me on this journey of spirit. And as the years have gone by, my heart has been stretched wider with the escalating numbers of orphans, widows, and the hungry that will continue to knock on our missionary door, seeking support in their struggle. And it's for this reason that the Spirit on this Pentecost commits each of us to open our hearts to the needy. And this Pentecost Sunday, the call for me says, "Will you come and follow me if I but call your name? Will you go where you don't know and never be the same again? Will you let my love be shown? Will you let my name be known?"